Welcome to American Atheists website. I'm Ellen Johnson, the president of American Atheists. Are you tired of feeling like you, as an atheist, are invisible to politicians? Atheists are quite rightly angered at the way the Democratic politicians pander to the religious in order to capture their votes. We expect this of the Republicans, but the Democrats? Both political parties are actively reaching out to those voters. They talk about how their faith is an integral part of how they make decisions. They also try to connect their faith with morality, or like there's any connection between the two. Well, maybe these politicians are that religious, or maybe it's just that they're politicians. In order for them to get elected, they have to go after votes wherever they can get them. And right now, that group is the religious. Sure, it's pandering. Sure, they don't mean a lot of it, but they're playing a game. If Rudolph Giuliani wants the votes of the religious, he has to deal with their criticisms over his divorces. Geez, is that really anyone's business? And don't you know he'd sure like to tell everyone that, and he'd be right. And Mitt Romney's Mormonism isn't very popular with the American people. Well, welcome to our world, Governor. Wouldn't it be nice to hear any one of these wannabe leaders show some leadership and remind everyone about Article 6 in the United States Constitution, which says no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States? Yeah, the government isn't making a religious requirement out of this, but it sure is one to the American people. Okay, so you want the attention of the politicians. Then don't vote for any politicians who treat you like you don't exist. It's that easy. I just received this email today from a woman named Gretchen. She said, could you organize an email campaign to let political candidates know that there are millions of atheist voters who are offended by their battles to be the most religious? I'm thinking about becoming a one-issue voter. If the candidates talk about God and their Christian beliefs, then I won't vote for him or her. Well, there you go. If Senators Clinton or Obama ignore you, then ignore them. If the Republicans ignore you, then ignore them. If a minority party candidate wants your vote and will work for it, then maybe you should give it to them. If you put any other issue before your atheism at the polls, then you will continue to be ignored. The choice is up to you. When the Godless Americans Political Action Committee endorses a candidate, then vote for that candidate. Support the GAM PAC, which will endorse those candidates who support us. We can do exactly what the theists do. We have the numbers. The number of non-religious Americans is estimated to be 14% by the American Religious Identification Survey, and that is 41 million Americans. The Barna Research Group puts the number at 18%, which is 54 million Americans. Contrast that with the number of evangelical Christians, which is estimated to be 45 million Americans, and you see that we have the numbers to be as politically effective, if not more so, than they are. The only difference between them and us is that they are politically organized and highly committed to winning. Beginning in the 1970s, they began to get themselves elected to local office, and they got out the votes for their chosen candidates. They saw what they wanted, and they went after it. They demonstrated political clout to the politicians, and now the politicians listen to them and court their votes. As we get closer to the 2008 presidential elections, it's important that local atheist groups consider spending a little less time on their discussion groups and brunches and spending more time holding political fundraisers, registering atheists to vote, getting atheists to the polls on Election Day, organizing phone banks, and by voting their atheism first. If a Republican candidate wants your vote, the GAM PAC's endorsement, and will not kowtow to the religious right, then we should vote for that candidate, regardless of political affiliation. I know this may be difficult to do. Yes, most atheists are liberals and Democrats, but we can't let the Democrats assume that they will automatically receive our support without earning it. If we do, then we will be ignored by them and take it for granted. We need to stir the pot a little to get their attention. Politicians aren't going to pay attention to us because we are nice people and because our message is reasonable. We have to make them listen with our votes. That and our campaign dollars are the only things they listen to. This means that if a Democratic candidate snubs us, then fine, we'll take our money and votes to the candidate who does want our support. The goal is to take enough votes from the hostile candidate and hurt them at the polls and send a message. We have to vote together on Election Day. The women, gays, unions, anti-war, environmental, and other groups can take care of those issues themselves right now. Believe me, they don't care about our issues enough to put it first on their list at the polls, even though voting for a candidate with a strong stance on state-church separation would help all of their causes. I'm sorry, but if we put any other issue before our atheism at the polls, then we can't expect anything to change. Gretchen, you're right. It's time to become single-issue voters because our issues count. Thanks for visiting our website.